I can't believe you have to follow the son of a gun for another 45 minutes. Not winning the race and the girl just because he's the main character turns out to be the last straw for Rudolph, and he runs away.
I'm out here on my own to face the day alone. I need you to get me through the night.
Of course they're gonna throw in a basic E-boy song that doesn't even sound close to Rudolph's regular voice.
Reaching for a star, wondering where you are.
I never thought there was a way to make a bland song just sync to plain bad. I know I just ranted about their true love enough, but this is absolutely abhorrent. If you liked each other this whole time, there was no need to keep stringing Arrow along like that. Zoey didn't even seem to like him in the first place. She insults him to his face and tells him Rudolph is better than him.
You're no flyer, Arrow. Flyers are brave, and they have character and true hearts, like Rudolph.
Yeah, true heart. As truthful as he was being by thinking winning was more important than the multiple accidents he caused. Or flirting with you behind your boyfriend's back. Are we supposed to like Rudolph in this movie? So Rudolph's wandering around in the cold, but turns out the politically correct fairies have been stalking and following Rudolph the whole time. They shine a rainbow into some cave and Rudolph goes in without questioning anything. Inside he meets a spunky Arctic fox named Slyly, voiced by Eric Idle. That was kinda out of nowhere, wasn't it? He sings this movie's version of Hakuna Matata. I actually like this one, it's rather catchy.
So for every step forward, there's a step in reverse. Things could be better, they could always be worse. Yes, things could be better in this big universe, but remember it could always be worse.
They seem to become best buddies and stick together. Back in Santa's village, his mom and dad are looking for Rudolph and find a letter.
Dear Mom and Dad, goodbye forever. Love, Rudolph.
Why am I not surprised by his dramatic red ass? When Cheating Bitch comes looking to talk to Rudolph, she's told he ran away.
I have to find him.
So it's gonna be her of all people to his rescue? Please no. The more screen time I see of her, the more I hate her. Well, his parents decide to do the competent thing and go to the big guy himself for a search party. Made of the two idiots from last time. As if Santa doesn't have any more elves to choose from his collection of ethnicities. We have a sudden time jump? Going from night to day just like that? Okay, I guess. The supposed villain that hasn't seen a single second of screen time for the last 40 minutes since she first appeared is finally back when Zoey just nonchalantly crosses the bridge to find Rudolph. Did she just forget what Stormella would do if anyone attempted to cross the bridge?
And if anyone from your village dares to cross it, I'll bury the North Pole in my biggest storm yet. I am talking hail, I am talking sleet, I am talking snow, and a wind chill factor that will knock your thermal socks off, baby!
A storm so intense that Santa would probably be unable to take out the sleigh, and all the children of the world would wake up with no presents. She goes anyway though, because her red-nosed boy toy is more important than Christmas itself. She doesn't even bother asking for any kind of help or assistance. Whatever happens is kind of all on her. A question that the movie will probably have no logical answer for. If Rudolph did head the way she's heading, he'd have to have crossed the bridge first, because Stormella's bridge is the only way across the chasm. Then if Rudolph had crossed the bridge, the storm would have been released already. So did Zoey not realize there was no logical way Rudolph could have gone that way? How did she pass basic exams in reindeer school? Did she cheat on those too? Anyway, Stormella catches her and locks her in the dungeon, where she finally realizes she kinda fucked up. Meanwhile, Rudolph and Slyly are caught in a random avalanche, but narrowly escape being trapped inside. And the two buffoons are still out there looking for Rudolph and Zoey.
We gotta find them, Doggo. We can't let Santa down.
We can't let Santa down? How about we can't let them die? They mentioned they wanted a higher rank than mailmen before, but are they more concerned with a promotion than the lives of two children? Of course Santa wouldn't send anyone else to look for them because that makes sense. See, the effect they want here is the opposite. Back to Rudolph and Slyly, they meet a polar bear called Leonard, voiced by Bob Newhart because the money must have been good, so they can add Pumbaa to complete their Timon and Simba ripoff trio.
Oh, well, why didn't you say so in the first place? I am Leonard.
The politically correct fairies return to tell Rudolph, and not the guy with search party resources and an army of elves, that Zoey has been captured. They teach Rudolph how to use his nose at will, and after that, they fuck off for the rest of the movie. That's it, that's their only contribution to the story. Well, good riddance. Rudolph and Leonard tread into Stormella's castle, but Slyly stays behind because he's too much of a little bitch. They manage to find Zoey but end up captured themselves.
But it's almost Christmas. A storm will ruin everything.
Hit it, Ridley.
We're forced to sit through the 7th song in this movie, but this time from Stormella.
Because you crossed my path, you'll feel Stormella's wrath. And it's because I hate Santa Claus, that cheerful Santa Claus.
All she sings about is how much she hates Santa Claus. You know, the whole time until now she hasn't even released that storm yet. If she hates him so much, why is she wasting our time? If you're gonna threaten someone, stick to your word. They got someone else to be her singing voice, but once it's back to Whoopi Goldberg, we're treated to some absolutely amazing dialogue.
You'll never get away with this.
Just watch me.
You're an evil old witch. That's what you are.
Flatterer. Remember, my little doe-eyed doe, you made the storm possible. Work that out in therapy.
Oh, Rudolph, I've ruined everything.
Yeah, I guess you did. So Red-Nosed Douche and Cheating Bitch confess their undying love for each other or whatever. So Stormella's finally gonna release that storm she should have done a long time ago.
Frigid weather, sleet and hail, snow and sleet and winds that wail.
I am no 10-tower frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, ever spark and blind with sting, lizard legs and owlet's wings.
And Slyly shows up to save them unexpectedly at the last minute. Yay! Slyly sneaks into Stormella's room and gets the key, ridiculously easily. But like, Stormella just got done unleashing the storm of storms, and she just goes to get some beauty sleep right after? Was chanting a couple lazy rhymes too tiring for her poor self to handle? Is sleeping her response to everything? If so, that's relatable. So they escape and end up cornered outside.
Who shall I freeze first? How about you, Zoey Doey?
Leave her alone!
And what are you gonna do about it?
Nah, of course she's still hanging on the edge, but seriously? Is everyone else dramatic about a little red light that's slightly too bright, or is Rudolph's abnormality a danger to everyone around him?
Help me! Help me!
Long live the king.
These are just my pathetic attempts at making this cliche-ass scene somewhat more interesting.
Well, I couldn't let you fall, could I?
Well, no, you couldn't. Well, you're right. So, well, you're free to go. Consider us even, Steven.
Not until he gets his wish.
What wish?
He saved your life. Now you owe him a wish.
He just saved your life. From the danger he put you in. Stormella letting them go just like that is barely bordering on logical because since they saved her, they're even. But now Rudolph gets to have a wish as a bonus because he's the main character, so he has to win everything. Also, he's asking the chick who just blew the North Pole's most awful hailstorm in history and essentially ruined Christmas. Would she be the type to grant wishes? She could have frozen them all on the spot and gone ahead with her Christmas-ruining bucket list, but nah. So Rudolph gets a wish, and just what does he wish for? For a normal nose? For her to open the bridge again? For the snowstorm to stop?
I want you to be nice.
And I think Stormella's response was actually Whoopi Goldberg's genuine reaction to the script.
What kind of wish is that?
He just wishes for her to be nice.
Nice.
That in and of itself is worded so vaguely that Stormella could take full advantage of that if she wanted to. She could feed them all to her white hounds right now and she'd still be being nice. To her hounds, by giving them a yummy treat for being such good boys. So Stormella just turns herself nice, and I can kinda see this is where Whoopi's overall enthusiasm for her character just went poof. Cause truth is, Stormella is boring if she's not evil.
Okay, now call off the storm.
Well, if only I could. Once I unleash the storm, it's got to run its natural course. I'm afraid it's out of my hands.
How convenient for the plot. Rudolph could have still wished for something much more useful. Way to waste your wish, red-nosed dumbass. So they go back home with the electric sleigh since the elves managed to find them. Meanwhile, it's snowing so intensely that Santa calls a meeting with apparently random people in his village. It's not like the reindeer who will be pulling his sleigh and flying through the storm should be there or anything.
I have no choice but to cancel the Christmas Eve launch.
Oh no, that sucks. Whatever shall we do? So Rudolph and company arrive home.
Rudolph! Your wonderful glowing nose gives me an idea so crazy, it just might work.
Headlights with a bit of a red aesthetic. Thank you, Rudolph. Your nose was a surge of inspiration to me. Ho ho ho. So Rudolph gets on a sleigh team and leads the sleigh through the storm.
And there's no easy road, and we haven't very much time. We gotta stick together, make it all last forever.
Only to end up around the same village they were in before. You know, this part always confused me as a kid. Were they just doing all this to warm up and then leave? Or did they give all the presents to every single child in the world in the span of that song, then came back around the same time as before? So anyway, the reindeer beat the storm, and the movie ends with everybody singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in the finale.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history. You'll go down in history.
So overall thoughts? Yeah, I definitely thought this was a lot better as a kid. The animation is on the line between not unwatchable but far from impressive. Especially for a theatrical release, it's mediocre. But there's one exception. In the storm scene, some of the reindeer run cycles in slow motion run rather smoothly. You can see more of physics applied to this part of the movie. The rest though? Like I said, look closely throughout the movie and you'll see a lot of errors. Deliberately left there thinking no one would notice. That's beyond lazy, but no matter what, I always keep in mind this is good times we're talking about. Most of the backgrounds, on the other hand, are rather well drawn. This is an aspect of animated films that rarely gets noticed. We get some pretty nice paintings of the Arctic mountains, or some houses with nice texture. My only issue is, sometimes it gets a little repetitive seeing the same kind of scenery over and over again. But it's very tricky to make a location like the Arctic look interesting or appealing because even in real life it just tends to all look the same. This is where animation is supposed to give that appeal. And yeah, definitely fail in that aspect. The voice acting was mostly good, of course, if they're getting a cast full of big-name actors. But it's difficult to focus on the quality of the voices itself if the animation doesn't match that quality. One particular frustration of mine was Stormella. Whoopi Goldberg does some pretty entertaining reads of her lines, but Stormella seems emotionless and boringly animated in comparison.
The North Pole's about to get awfully dull.
The songs are meh, one or two are catchy, but none of them had me humming any tune once the movie was over. But I particularly like the ending song, We Can Make It. It's a part that I always enjoyed as a kid too, and I like the aesthetic of the reindeer battling the storm to save Christmas. If the whole movie had this kind of atmosphere, it would have been a lot better.
Even though it's dark, blue skies are coming your way. We'll survive this stormy ride. We can make it if we try.
One of the most important points, the story, mostly follows the song exactly as is, with one of the few twists noticeable enough being Stormella's involvement. They really did spoil the whole thing in that beginning Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer song. The characters never feel like they're in any real danger. It just seems like since it's a kid's movie, everything will turn out alright in the end. And the dangers the characters do end up in, most of the time end up being out of absolutely nowhere, or their own damn fault. So it's hard to feel concerned for them or worried to see if they'll make it out. One of my biggest issues, though? How all that the supposed villains do is technically justified. That wouldn't be an issue at all, actually, because a villain whose actions are justified is A, usually but not always, not a villain, but an antagonist, and B, a well-written character. It wouldn't be an issue if it didn't make the main character the asshole instead. Of course, Stormella or Arrow are far from being well-written characters, and that's because we get so little exposition to them. They simply have the potential to be well-written characters. The horribly paced romance between a red-nosed incel with an ego and a cheating little princess holds less water than a bucket full of holes. We get no build-up of them meeting or getting to know each other or even falling in love. Rudolph just starts out with a crush on Zoey and she tries to immediately flirt with him just because he's different. This true love thing is bullshit because in real life it requires so much more than one smart response in class and being different to almost out of nowhere jump ahead and say,
Rudolph, you mean everything to me.
The overall art direction and character designs were pretty average and not that impressive or appealing. I just could not get over the fact that these are not reindeer, they're deer. It's a pretty common mistake for American depictions of reindeer in Santa Claus movies, especially in animated ones, and I'm not sure why. If we're being technical here, male reindeer shed their antlers by winter while females keep theirs around that time to protect their young. So all of Santa's reindeer are female, including Rudolph?
Also, an interesting thing with reindeer is both the males and the females have antlers, as they're the only member of the deer species where both have antlers, and the calves even start growing antlers when they're a couple weeks old.
And all the female reindeer in the movie never show any antlers at all. That's because they call themselves reindeer but are obviously behaving like white-tailed deer. Probably because Bambi's influence was so strong that for some reason it kept confusing audiences and thinking reindeer, caribou, deer are all the same. Newsflash, they aren't. So that leaves us with an extremely average, bland, mediocre movie that fails to shine enough to make it all that special. How did this even make it to theaters at all? I'm seriously baffled. I don't know how movies get chosen to go to the big screen or anything, but how did any dumbass see that Disney's Mulan was out the same year and go, "Oh yes, this shall make a fine addition to our animated film collection, kids sure gonna love that"? So how would I improve this movie? I'll do a little better. I made a very short concept pitch of how this movie could have been improved. First of all, character designs. I don't recall a single animated Rudolph movie that portrays Rudolph as what he actually is, a reindeer and not a deer. So here's a few concepts of Rudolph I drew, depicting him as a more stylized reindeer but still realistically resembling one. Second, the songs. Okay, so seeing as the Rudolph song would have to be included somewhere, I'd be alright with leaving it as a musical. I'm not a composer, but I'd say remove a couple songs that were seriously not needed or offer nothing to move the story along. The whole town bullying baby Rudolph song, Santa's song, just make Santa cut to the chase and give Rudolph a quick pep talk instead. Stormella's dumb song, and dear God, remove all the fairies once. You know what? Get rid of the fairies entirely. They're ultimately useless, and all they do to contribute is one scene where they teach Rudolph to use his nose. The rest of the time, they're giving us pointless introductions through songs and we don't need them. Finally, the story. Oh boy. Let's start by all the injustices Rudolph suffers actually be due to prejudice and not for logical reasons such as concern for the safety of his fellow reindeer or hitting on another guy's girlfriend. Simple changes we can do is make Arrow simply pretend to be blinded by Rudolph's nose and thus getting Rudolph disqualified and winning the race on purpose. Let's also have Arrow and Zoey not be dating. Arrow's just an extremely jealous friend of hers, but Zoey is someone who sees the good in everyone, including him, so she's still friends with Arrow and Rudolph regardless. Let's have Stormella have an active reason to hate Santa Claus so much. I actually found a comment in another review of this movie of someone who met the film's screenwriter, who explained a lot of things that were cut from the final version that end up explaining a lot of the plot holes or shallowness in the story. You can pause to read. Actually, say, instead of fixing this one, what if we were making an entirely new Rudolph movie in this day and age? I'll compare the claymation version as well. I wanted to remove the whole romance altogether simply because it's not needed. So many movies with great storylines and interesting characters are ruined because of a pesky, cliché romance that really adds nothing of value. A romance needs to be very well placed and paced for it to work screenwriting-wise. I wanted Rudolph to learn at the end of his adventure that he is enough, the way he is. He doesn't gain value only when his disability becomes exploitable, or when a girl he likes ends up liking him back. I'd adapted to today's ideals by making it a story about self-love and acceptance. Because even if Rudolph realizes he's still gonna be made fun of even in his adulthood, even if there are still people who think his disability is a problem or an impediment and try to shelter him because of it, and even if there are also people who only value it after seeing a specific use for it, Rudolph will be alright. Because no matter what, he's learned his own value, and that he is the only one who has a say in his own worth. And that's something no one else can take away from him. I think that's a much better message, especially for people who watch this movie who go through things like bullying or who have a disability. So those were my 2 cents on how this Rudolph movie could be made better. Now that that's over with, I'll be enjoying myself watching every single early 2000s Christmas movie I can find. You know, the ones with real animals edited to make their mouths move when they talk, like those Air Bud movies. Alright then everyone, enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and whatever you celebrate. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.